1,000 GPUs. That's the total combined capacity for high performance computing systems across the UK. Now, for context, Meta used 16,000 just for training one of their models. Now, whilst companies keep hoarding GPUs in the tune of hundreds of thousands, researchers fight for scraps. Often compromising on their experiments as a result. As you know, I was one of them. Now this ends now. Kalavai is a platform that helps crowdsource computing for AI. Researchers can plug in their own devices from their labs, but they can also inspire the community to lend theirs. We manage the complexity and facilitate the matchmaking. We are seeking investment and also strategic partnerships. My name is Carlos, and I believe innovation is way too precious to leave it in the hands of a few tech companies alone. Thank you.
Okay. I think to make it simple, again, I'm not an expert about this field. We have one question here, but it feels like just like mining Bitcoin, but for GPUs.
Yeah, but instead of random computation, wasting the CO2 and all of that and burning the fuel, it's actually useful computation for researchers or anyone that wants.
Interesting.
Hi. I'm sorry, maybe it's not a silly question, but I just.
Yes.
Hi. Anyway, so could you give me an example? So which one to be your potential customer?
Yeah, so the perfect example is a researcher, such as myself. A few years ago, I was in the lab and I wanted to perhaps test some hypotheses on large language models, and I had to compromise on the size of the models that I had to run because I only had, let's say, 4 GPUs. I was lucky. That is in research being lucky. So maybe you have to compromise. You can't run at the ChatGPT or Llama's, Falcon's level, and then you have to compromise. So that's an ideal customer for us. Just going to a research institution and say, well, when a need a spike, you can offload some of that computation for the community, but also at the same time you can leverage the computation that you have from grad students, from undergrad students, from teaching assistants, etc. So their laptops, desktops, etc. So effectively, we make all of that AI-enabled, so they don't have to go to either the cloud or the HPC systems.
All right.
Okay, thank you. So I'm here. Right. Many years ago, I came across a service created by the University of Berkeley called Onk. It seems to be a very similar thing, if I'm not mistaken. So what's the difference that you provide? And what is your business model? It's not clear to me, sorry.
Yes, so there are a few. There's also more recent ones like Petals. There's also from like scientific community saying, hey, let's all pool resources together. Now, they are at the software layer. So they assume, the thing that is big to assume, that computing is already coming to them. So that's the difference. They are sort of distributing the compute, and they sit on an assumed hardware that they already have. Now, our difference is that we are actually trying to democratize, quote unquote, the hardware architecture. So our unique selling proposition is that we're going to make that easy. So solutions like Boeing and Petals and others can actually be on top of us.
All right, we have one question there.
Yeah, I do think what you're doing is quite interesting because I work in ML research as well. And my question is, how much are you going to take off me as a startup if I decide to use your platform? Don't worry, I can see you clearly.
How much am I going to take from you?
How much are you charging? Like, what's your pricing like, if I'm going to use your platform? Because I think I find it very interesting what you're doing, and it's very useful for me because I build multi-agent systems and it requires lots of compute. So yeah, that's very useful to me.
I just forgot the business model question, which is kind of related.
That's why I'm to you back.
Thank you. So the idea is, if you're using, so we have a SaaS part of the business, which is a managed control plane for your hardware. So if you're using your on-prem hardware, You can opt to, it's, by the way, it's open source, so if you want to manage yourself, free. Everyone can use it for free. There's no problem. If you want to get like extra security and authorization and user authentication and things like that, then we can provide that as a service. And then on the other hand, there's also a stream of revenue from cloud providers and data centers, and also potentially in the future from consumers that can loan or lend their hardware to researchers, but also to startups. So you would pay effectively for what you use.
Okay, we have 2 more questions. Yeah.
So, any more questions around how you building up the underlying infrastructure within the model to get the required GPUs? Is that infrastructure costs are going to sit on you as a business, and how much would that be?
The question is, where does the infrastructure sit? It is ours?
Yes, yeah. So how are you getting the infrastructure and how all that we want
From you. It is sure, but effectively, so any computing device, anyone that wants to contribute, they can install a piece of software on any device, including the cloud, but also on-prem and your consumer devices. But predominantly what we're focusing at the moment is resources that companies or research institutions already have. So it would be their infrastructure. We do not own any infrastructure, even though we might, for spikes and troughs, want to sort of arbitrate that. But we're not in the business of owning infrastructure. We're in the business of more akin to a marketplace or a facilitator.
All right, the last question.
So I worked at a company once where we explored this possibility. So I wanted to ask whether all these devices are put in a common pool, or whether there's an ability to do like a B2B offering where you might ask all employees to keep their laptop on overnight. And related to that, how do you then reward individuals for contributing to devices? You've got almost like a B2B bit and then a bit where you can motivate device owners.
Perfect question. I didn't plant it. So the idea is that anyone can create their own cluster. So if you're a company and you want to create, you have your, as you said, your employees and your hardware, then you can say, mandate to your employees at night, don't turn it off, and that's it. That's your private thing, and we don't even have access to that. No one can access that network. You also have the possibility of creating public clusters. This is something that we offer as a service as well. We say, hey, here are a public listing of research institutions or startups or hobbyists that want to do X, Y, Z. And then that's the inspire. So if you inspire the community, they can join on your project, on your journey, and provide their hardware. At the moment, we do not monetize ourselves. That sort of transaction is more on a volunteer basis, but we totally see that as an immediate next step. How do we make a system of incentives that we can facilitate people, because this hardware is quite expensive, so beyond the people that use Boeing and volunteer computing, obviously there's going to be very limited uptake for loaning your devices unless you're taking money out from that. But the good thing is that there's a lot of difference in price between the cloud compute and free, so there's a lot of space for us to sit in there.
All right.